This is The Recap, a weekly reflection on the sermons of Fellowship Baptist Church in Mainville, Ohio, seeking to help you make Jesus essential in every aspect of your life. I'm your host, Ryan Land, and I'm here with the preacher of this week's sermon, Brent Wilson. Brent, welcome to the new setup.
The new set.
The new set. You put up these boards,
Yeah,
which they'll be complete.
You're not done yet.
Not done yet, but we wanted to show people, and so. But Josh he painted the wall. He did some carpeting in here. Did a lot of lighting stuff, and so I brought these books. That was my contribution to the project.
And the plant.
This is from Darcy's office. So there's a little bit of all of us here in the new recap set. But so excited to get back. We've had a couple weeks off. I don't know if you've realized, but we've
more than one.
Yeah, I think so. Because the last episode we did was on anxiety, and I think that was more than one sermon ago. Am I right?
I just remember not being here last week because I had a procedure.
Procedure. The way you said that was funny. Yeah. But I think there were a sermon in between that, right?
I can't remember yesterday,
Me
bro.
neither. Well, I hope you can remember 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be talking about your sermon from 2 days ago. But first, I've got a question. I've asked you a similar question before, but this is a little bit of a spin on it. We're talking about ask, and it'll be given to you, seek, and you will find, knock, the door will be open for you. But what is something that you've asked for, like as a present, but have never received?
Oh, I've never received. Oh.
I used to have like a go-to answer for this. Like I would always ask my parents to get me this thing, and they never got it for me. And I'm right now
Can't think
blanking on what it is.
Asked and have never.
I feel like you got to think back to when you're a kid, because like when you're an adult, if you don't get it,
you just go buy it yourself.
Just go buy for yourself.
Yeah, that's kind of what my problem is. Gosh, I don't know, man.
Or like, what is something like? I don't know.
I'm
if you can't have it, you can't have an answer for. I was trying to kind of spin the question, but then it just turns into like a genie 3 wishes thing. Oh, okay. Here we go.
Okay.
All right. I'm a genie. Okay. You can ask me one thing or one wish, but I'm gonna put some kind of spin on it. You know, like a genie will. Okay. So I'm gonna see if I can outsmart your wish here.
I get one wish, but I can't. I'm assuming I can't wish for more wishes.
You can.
I can't. Ooh,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you can.
It's tricky. I won't do that. I'll say I wish that I could have the superpower of flying.
You do have the superpower of flying, but everything else about your physiology is the same. And so if you go too high, you can't breathe the air. It's too cold. Your body can't handle like the G forces of going super fast.
My body already can't handle G forces.
You can fly at like average heights at like walking or running speed.
So it can't get anywhere any faster.
There you go.
Man,
there you go.
Kind of a bummer.
All right. You do me.
I'm not as good at this, but
I'm gonna wish for I'm gonna wish that I had a Bitcoin wallet full of Bitcoin that I had bought in 2014. I bought 10 Bitcoins.
Okay.
In 2014, and they're in my Bitcoin wallet right now.
Okay, you have them, but when you bought them, you also staked them for 100 years, and so you have them, but you can't take them out and use them.
Dang, that's good. That's good. I didn't know that was a thing you could do.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to know that in this sermon we learned about that God is not the monkey's paw trying to trick us when we ask for things and when we go to him in prayer. And so let's kind of go through these main points. And where I want to start is with we both commented after the sermon. You read a quote and it felt like the whole room went, after you read it. So I want to start with that quote and then kind of move on from there. But so the quote was a Corey ten Boom quote, which funny. I think both of our wives are influencing the quotes we pull from because you're using a Corey ten Boom quote. I've written an Elizabeth Elliot quote later on in this to talk about because my wife loves Elizabeth Elliot.
Our prospective wives' heroes,
almost to the level that your wife loves Corey ten Boom. But so here's what Corey ten Boom says about prayer. She says, "Is prayer your steering wheel or your spare tire. Why do you think like when people heard that, they went, and why do you think people resonated with that?
I think because people realize they don't pray, and that they realize that prayer is not a contributing factor to the decisions that they make or the actions that they take. Prayer is truly, and you think about the spare tire analogy, and it's like when we go to get a spare tire, we're like, where was that thing at again? How do I get it out? How do I use this jack? And so, you think about how many people are uncomfortable praying in public. Well, why are you uncomfortable praying in public? Well, probably because you don't pray very often in private. If you did something all the time in private, to do it in public would not be a big deal. Like if you played the guitar all the time in private, you'd be good enough to do it in public. And so because we don't use it, I think people just kind of resonate with the reality that this is not a thing that guides my life.
Yeah.
It's a thing that I pull out when something's gone wrong, and I feel like I got a flat tire on the side of the road. Something's gone wrong, and so I've got to pull this out to use it.
Yeah. I think Kevin DeYoung has a book about the Lord's Prayer, and he talks about how there's no element more essential to the Christian life than prayer. There's also no element more discouraging to the Christian life than prayers, because it just feels like something we can never be content with. It's like we always wish we prayed more. Even people, I think, with really lively, really dedicated, disciplined prayer lives, I think would still say, I should pray more. Especially with the command, 1 Thessalonians, pray without ceasing. It's like, don't stop praying. Yeah.
Well, it's fascinating. I started the sermon talking about there's, most of us in this room have asked the question, how's your prayer life or whatever, we'd say, well, I pray, but I could pray more.
Yeah.
And the reason I even brought that up, and I didn't say it this is, but every deacon interview I think I've ever been a part of, and every church, we ask that question, talk to me about your, the spiritual disciplines in your life.
Yeah.
And without fail, they all say, I pray, I try to pray a lot, but I could pray a lot more.
Yeah.
And so it's like even guys who are solid and praying regularly feel they don't pray enough.
Yeah. Well, like Eugene Peterson talks about his son in some interviews that a guy did in writing a biography about Eugene Peterson, talked about how his dad would dedicate hours of his morning to studying the Bible and prayer. And Eugene Peterson would probably even have said, I didn't pray enough. I could have prayed more. And I think that's one thing that was helpful about your sermon is you said the first point was that prayer begins where our strength ends, and that in prayer, it's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like in prayer, you're recognizing that your strength is not enough. And so then that what that does is then turn you to pray more. And so talk about a little bit what you meant when it's like where your strength ends. Does that mean, in what kind of situations are you thinking about, and what kind of circumstances?
Well, yeah, it's a little bit of a play on, not necessarily like a little bit of a twofold thing here. On the one hand, it's a problem because we don't pray until there's that moment of crisis in our life.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I don't actually have any strength here because I can't do anything to help this person. I don't have my abilities, my wisdom, my strength, my effort is meaningless. The only thing I have left to do is pray.
Yeah.
On the one hand, it's that. On the other hand, it should be a realization that I actually don't have the strength, the ability, the wisdom to particularly accomplish the commands of God that He's put in my life. And so when I realize that, even when it's not a crisis moment, I should be praying because in my strength, I can't do it.
Oh, for sure. I think there's a connection. Me and Nathan talked about this. There's a connection between this idea that you're hitting at and the sort of the secret righteousness portion of the Sermon on the Mount, because it's like there's so many things we try to do by our own strength for the approval of man, and you can never like keep that up, right? Like you can't keep up appearances as like someone who's generous and forgiving and all of these things, like just of your own power. Like the facade's gonna crack. We've seen that happen like so many times to people in leadership. It's like only when God is the one who is doing the empowering, and those circumstances or those moments are being used to glorify God's power, not your own power, not your own strength, but God's strength. That's when, like you're really having to rely on God, and the prayer becomes easier because you're saying, I know I can't. I can recognize I can't do this on my own. It's like we have to recognize my strength. His strength is made perfect in my weakness.
Right.
And so when we pray, that's what we're saying is like, God, I'm weak, but I want your strength to perfect my weakness, to be made perfect in my weakness. And so I think, one thing I try to pray for a lot, because I have a tendency to not be this is patience. I have a tendency to not be a very patient person. And so I wake up every morning and it's like, and not just like there's this big thing in my life that I need to be patient for, but it's like that just in every day, like I do not have the patience within myself to honor God with my words and my attitudes.
Yeah.
And so I've got to ask God, give me your patience because I can't do it.
Yeah. We didn't talk, this is not really part of the sermon, but it's so funny. People always say, don't ask God for patience because, what he does is give you opportunities
to be patient. Yeah.
And that's true for, whether it's give me strength, give me endurance, give me boldness to share the gospel. Yeah. It's like, all right, here's an opportunity.
Well, and it's funny, like something you're thinking of that I'm just thinking of right now is kind of like, we say like, don't ask God for an opportunity to give you patience because he's going to give you an opportunity to be patient. But it's not just that; it's an opportunity to rely on His patience. It's like when you pray, like God, let me interact with someone who is a non-believer who I can share the gospel with today. It's like that's half a prayer because it's like you get there and you have the interaction. And you're like, God, I need your words, I need your boldness, I need your power. Right? It's like so because it's going to happen when you ask for it. And so being ready, but also being able to recognize. I can't do this, I think is key to strengthening our prayer life, which is, it's almost feels like an oxymoron. You talked about this being like, or you talked about this at Men's Grow Night, like how there are disciplines that are like muscles and they atrophy, and how like prayer is a muscle we have to work out. And if we don't, it atrophies. But a little bit, we have to say, hey, I'm weak at this. I need God to carry me. Well, so then this kind of links into like when we pray and how we pray. Your second point was we should pray with confidence because we know that God hears us. To talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. We know Jesus here is obviously inviting us to pray. There are 3 commands to pray, 6 promises of response. And so, but you think about something, if you're talking to somebody that doesn't really listen, I've noticed so much more recently, how often talking to someone that someone will pull out their phone. And it's amazing how deflating that is in a conversation. It's like, I really want to start just be like,
I know.
I just want to stop talking. I've done that a few times. I've just stopped. And then like they realize and and they'll put it away. Yeah. It's like if you're talking to somebody who's not listening, it doesn't encourage me to want to talk to you.
Yeah.
I think about maybe kids who go to their parents and they're like, trying to get something through. If it's like, oh, later, eventually they're gonna, okay, well, I'm not gonna go because I don't have a willing ear. And so we have to realize that God is inviting us to pray. He wants to hear us. He wants to answer. All of those things. I mean, like it's not in this text, but like if you look at the whole Bible, it's like, hey, we have an advocate with the Father, right? Jesus is our high priest who is standing in the gap and is going to the Father on our behalf and like almost taking our prayers to Him, or the Spirit intercedes with groans that are too deep for words. And so it's like we have this great access, and He hears us and listens. And so when you know that, I think it helps us to pray, because I do think deep down that sometimes we're just afraid that God is, and this is not like a conscious thought, right? This is like subconscious. But it's like God's too busy. God has bigger priorities.
It's not our head knowledge, but it's our heart belief. It's like it's the posture of our heart.
It's what we feel. Yeah, we feel like he's too busy. He's cares more about other people, or like I haven't lived up to my end of things, and so why would he ever listen to me?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think you talk about this a lot, and I talked about this a little bit in the sermon on the Lord's Prayer. But that's like, who is the only person who can go into the king's bedroom at night and ask for a drink of water, and it's for a bottle of water, and it's the prince, it's the son, it's the heir. That's who has the privilege, and so I think that's another thing that helps us grow in prayer, in our prayer life, is recognizing it as like a divine privilege that is only given to sons and daughters of God, only the people who are adopted into his family.
This is a little side tangent, but the video I sent you the other day about where like the Christians were asked a question and they kind of like spread out from agree and disagree, whatever. One of the questions was, are all people children of God? And they all kind of go agree, disagree to different variations. And it's like, while we would say in a general sense, all people are God's children in that they're his creation, we're
in his image,
we're not all adopted children of God, we're not all heirs, so we're not all.
It's like in one sense we're children of wrath, When it comes to our standing before God.
Yeah, and so believers in Christ are actually children of God in a way that just other people who are creations of God are not children, and so it's like we have this different level of access.
It raises an interesting question, which we may not have time to answer. But does God hear the prayers of non-believers?
Yeah. I've heard people say something to the effect of like, he only hears the prayer of repentance, like the prayer of faith. I think largely that I can think of off the top of my head, the Bible is fairly silent on the question. Certainly God hears them.
Yeah.
Like, cause God
knows what they say.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
He's omniscient.
Like it's not like the person's talking and he can't hear the words. So it's obviously he hears it. The question is he responding? Is he answering? Whatever. And I guess I would theologically, just kind of thinking off the top of my head, say no, because they don't have the advocate, they don't have the priest who is have made access available.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't. I used to know a verse off the top of my head. I can't think of it anymore. About how he hears, but I can't think of it. But I think you're right. That's what I'll say.
I'm willing to be changed on that.
Yeah, for sure. So you move on from anything else about confidence that you want to talk about. There's that Luther quote, or was it a Calvin quote about like, there should be Calvin. Nothing. I can't remember off the top of my head. I
got it right here. Hang on, let's see.
But like 2024ization is like nothing should jazz you up to pray.
Yeah, nothing is better. This is the old English kind of thing, or I guess French. Calvin was French, right? Yeah.
Dutch? French.
No, French.
Okay.
Geneva. Nothing is better adapted to excite us to prayer than a full conviction that we shall be heard.
Oh yeah. I just thought of this, thinking of this quote, but it's like people post these like 10,000 word essays on Facebook or whatever. That's like, it's like the only reason people are posting stuff like that on Facebook is because they're assuming people are reading it. It's so it's like we should have the same confidence in prayer that we have on Facebook.
I just want y'all to know, if it's a long post, I ain't reading it.
I ain't reading that.
I love that thing.
I'll say I ain't reading all that, but I'm happy for you. Or I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah. Whatever the right response is, that's what I think.
That's what I think. Oh, okay. So then we moved from confidence, and then you made the point that we should pray consistently and with urgency. And this is where in the text you got to the ask, seek, knock language. And so talk a little bit about that. I think part of it was sort of the ramping up nature of the words. So just kind of unpack those three words for us.
Yeah. So in some ways, these are just synonyms. They all mean pray.
You just said three things that mean the same thing.
Yeah. That was a West Wing reference.
It was.
Yeah. So in some ways, they're synonyms. Like they always.
Josh, the
pray.
West Wing is a TV show from
the 90s
before you were born. He's making a sad face. He
Yeah,
doesn't like it when I old explain things. It's like mansplaining, except it's like
old splaining.
old splaining because I'm old and he's
The 29-year-old.
A student told me, yeah, you're basically 30 the other day. It's like, you're 29, you're basically 30.
Yeah. So
Ask, seek, knock.
yeah, synonyms for prayer.
Yeah.
But they also do have like this increased sort of ascending kind of intensity to them. They are these present imperative verbs. So it's like, hey, do this and continue to do this. And so that's where the pray continually comes from. It's actually in the grammar. But I do think each word kind of gives us this different, perspective. Like if you're looking at what a painting from a different perspective, different angles or whatever. And so ask, has this, where else do we see this used? We see it when a beggar is asking for charity. We see it when someone in court is asking the judge for something, maybe asking for clemency. We see it when an inferior is asking a superior for some privilege or something. And so it definitely communicates humble estate, humble approaching God with humility. And I didn't realize this, and a commentary pointed this out to me, that the parable of the Pharisee and if you some call it the parable of the Pharisee and the publican, but the
tax collector, the publican. What does that mean?
I don't know.
What about if you publican?
Not a republican.
I'm about to say, what if you publican again?
Yeah,
that'd be a republican.
Yeah. But that the Pharisee never asks God for anything. He's like, God, thank you that I'm not like this guy. He's talking to God, he's praying, but he's never saying, God, I need your help. I need your grace. I need strength. He doesn't ask for anything. He's like, he feels self-sufficient. And then Jesus obviously is rejecting that approach in the parable. And the guy that Jesus is honoring or praising, or this is the way to do it, is the guy who is on his face and he's like, I need forgiveness. He's asking for all of these things from God. And it was so interesting because often when I've preached on prayer, talked about prayer, I'm highly critical of the asking, right? Because all we do is ask for things. We treat God sometimes like the genie in the sky. God, give me this, give me this, give me this. But it's usually we're asking for superficial things, right? And here we're really seeing, asking for wisdom, for whatever.
It's funny you make that wisdom, particularly because you talked about this, and I had this in my notes for later on to talk about, but it applies here too. Because, I've seen so many prosperity gospel preachers, talk about you have not because you ask not. I've seen Steve Harvey, like, you have not because you ask not, like yelling it at people.
Oh yeah.
He's like,
you ain't got a Lamborghini because you ain't asked for a Lamborghini.
You're asking for your car to be fixed. You need to be asking for a new car.
Yeah.
It's like, you have not because you ask not. And so I went and I looked at that verse because they, seems related to this topic. And did you reference that in the sermon? James 4.
Yeah.
You have not because you ask not.
Twice.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And so I wanted to go kind of look at it in context, and you have James 4:2. You have not because you ask not, and then the very next verse, you ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. It's like you're asking maybe even for the right thing, but with the wrong motives. You could be asking for something good, but only to use it on your own.
Well, yeah, it's like
passions.
there's a difference between asking for a car because I want to look cool and drive around my sports car versus asking for the Lord to provide a bus so that we might travel around and pick up people to bring them to church.
Yeah.
Right.
Or even the bus. Like there's a difference between asking for the bus to pick up people to church, to get people into your church and hear the gospel and saved, or to pick them up in the bus so they get in and give.
Oh yeah.
Or they think you're so great because you go pick people up in the bus, you know?
For sure.
But it's like, even in the beginning of James, he says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach. And so it's like, there's this, even James is saying, it's like, ask for wisdom and God will give it to you. It's like, ask and you will receive it, but ask with the right motive. Ask with the right
Man, so
ending.
Yeah. And we talk about being persistent in prayer. That's just a funny thing. So I won't call him out, but there's a guy in my D group who has been in my D group since the beginning for 3 years now, 2 years, however long.
3, I think.
Every week we do prayer requests.
Mm-hmm.
He asks for the same thing. He says, pray that God will give me wisdom. So it's like the persistence of like, I've got it. I need more of it. Keep it coming.
Do you think he wants like a Solomon moment? This is like God's just gonna be like, here you go, here's all of it. No, I think that's good. Well, I'll save that as when we till we get to the end. So anything about seeking or knocking that you?
The seeking thing that was most intriguing to me is just this idea of the journey.
Yeah, I love this. As someone who loves like fantasy and like this was like the quest.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I love this.
Yeah. Any story, literally every story, like you start one way, the character's got a problem, some character deficiency, whatever. And as he's gone through the story and he gets to the end, he's gone through these highs and lows, and now he is transformed. He's better. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so in prayer, as we are seeking God, right, the scriptures confirm, like tell us, we will find him. But he makes it a little difficult for us sometimes because he wants us to wrestle. Yeah. And I just think if you go read the Psalms and you watch David struggle, here he is promised to be the king, and he doesn't have the kingship, right? And he's like, God, are your promises true? Where are you? And even after he's king and he's struggling with things, he's doubting God, he's wrestling with God, he's questioning God, and through the seeking of truth, of God, of strength, he gets the answers, right? Or at least gets the comfort. Yeah. And so the journey that God takes us on develops us and strengthens us. And we sometimes we get to the place where we go, oh man, I was asking for this thing, and now I actually see more clearly that's not what I needed. I actually needed this. So
yeah, I think the thing I loved about the seeking is, you talked about this thing I frequently say about not wondering anymore, like no one wonders anything anymore. And me and Darcy were talking about the sermon after the service on Sunday, and she was talking about that's just so true. In our whole experience is just like whatever I want, whenever I want it, I can have it. And that has, and she was saying this, she's like that, we think about that in terms of like our desires, our passions. Like if I want to buy this thing on Amazon, I desire it, I can buy it, it'll get delivered. It's like I want this food, I can go out and get it. I can get it DoorDashed to my doorstep or whatever. And she goes, but what we don't see is that the effect that can sometimes have on our minds, and it's that we don't want to wait for an answer. We don't want to wait for a response. We don't want to, and so
we don't want to sit in the unknown, uncertainty.
And so we'll ask God, we'll seek wisdom, we'll seek, patience, strength, whatever. But if we don't see it on the timeline we want it, we're going to go find somewhere else to get. We're going to go find a book. We're going to go find a podcast. We're going to go find an article. We're going to go find, it's like, which some of that stuff could be good to go.
Could be part of the seeking.
Yeah. But we're looking for the get patient quick scheme, the get strong quick scheme, the get wise quick scheme, and that's just not going to happen. Yeah. These things take time, and being comfortable and content in the waiting. Yeah.
I didn't bring this up, and I meant to, and I wish I would have, but some of the times we seek and we never feel like we arrive because life moves too fast and we've actually moved on to the next problem. And so when you journal about the things you're praying about,
this is
you
great.
Write down, hey, I'm praying about this. Then those things get answered.
Yep.
If you didn't journal, they get answered and you don't even realize it because you're on to the next problem or the whatever. And you've missed it. But when you journal, it's like, oh man, it took 6 months.
Yeah.
But now I see what God was doing.
One of my favorite things that's happened to me recently was my mom sent me a birthday present or something where she said, I sent your journal in, I think you must have left it here. I was like, okay. And I get it. And it gets to, I was like, I don't think I left a journal there. And I get it, and it's like from college. It's like a journal that she had found. Yeah. Like, but she thought I had left it at home or something. And so like the last entry was from like 20 17 or something. But so then I get to sit there and open it,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to read it and remember all the things that I was going through, the things that I was struggling with, and the things that I was praying for, and being like, oh, and I grabbed Darcy. I was like, Darcy, look at some of this stuff. And I was like showing her, and I was like, man, like, look at all these answered prayers. Look at all these things God did. And so it was amazing. And so, yeah, I think that's a note on your phone. Like, there is something I think to say about writing out prayers. That slows you down. But if you're not there yet and you just want, to keep track on your phone, I used to carry around like a little little booklet, like this big. And when people would tell me to pray for something or I thought of something, I would just write it down in that little booklet. And so, that's good. I think that's a great practice. Yeah. And helps you get find the conclusion to the seeking. Yeah. It's like you're not just wandering. You are going from point A to point B. And you may be at point D or X, and then God reminds you, it's like, hey, look, I took you from A to B. Yeah. Like you moved on, but I was faithful. Yeah, I think it's so good.
You'll see, it will actually help you in the future when the crisis has come, or when you need strength or whatever, because you look back and go, oh, yeah, God has been, I got notebooks full of God's faithfulness. I ain't worried about this. But the reason we get worried is because we haven't seen. Yeah. Because we're just moving too fast.
Yeah, that's one thing I try to teach the students. It's like, you're going to face crisis in your life, and you got three things. You got three evidences you can look to of God's faithfulness to people in crisis. You got him being faithful to his people through all of Scripture. You've got the people in your church that God has been faithful to all throughout their lives. Go find anyone with gray hair and say, what's a time God was faithful to you? And they'll tell you a story. And then your own experience, right? When God has been faithful to you. It's like, so you don't have to doubt it now. Yeah. You have to be scared now. You have to be anxious now, because you got all these different places you can go look that says, hey, look, God was faithful to me. Yeah. And so it's important to build that out for yourself. Yeah. So what about knocking? What's specific about knocking?
Yeah, it's about persistence. It's not a gentle. It's a banging, really.
I thought about a door knocker when you were talking about that.
Oh yeah. Goo, goo, goo. But it's all about persistence. It's, I'm going to keep knocking until you open the door. And he'll open it. But sometimes, just like in the seeking, he wants you to knock a little bit. Yeah.
And we can't be like, I'm gonna put two students on blast right now.
Okay.
Michael and Tyler Owens, they came to my door the other day and they rang the doorbell. And I was downstairs watching a movie, and so I pull it. I've got like the video doorbell, so I look and I see who it is. It's like, is it someone I want to go answer the door for? So I see it's them. I'm like, oh, okay. So I go upstairs and I open the door and they're gone. I'm like, y'all didn't wait at all for me to get up here. So I text them like, hey, come back. Like, cause they live right down the street. I was like, hey, come back. What'd you need? Yeah. So they come back. And was just like, ring the doorbell. It's like, let's take it too long and then get out of here.
That's that instant gratification. Amazon problem.
We can't do that with God, to just like, all right, I need something. God, I'm coming to his door. I'm going do. I'm out of here, dude. I'm going somewhere else.
That's perfect. Yes.
So then this is kind of your last point. What we should expect our prayers to be answered in accordance with the goodness of God. And this is the father kind of parable metaphor. What did you hope people got out of that? What did you?
Yeah, like you said, people will take this passage as a prosperity gospel promise. Hey, man, if we ask for it, and there's other passages similar. If we ask for it in faith, He'll give it. If we ask in His name, He'll give it to us. And it's just like this thought struck me, and I never thought about it before, and I just mentioned it briefly in the sermon. But what a burden it would be if God.
Wait, no, I thought this was excellent.
If God gave us everything we asked for, it made me think of Bruce Almighty. Remember when he doesn't have time to go through all the prayers, and so he just says reply yes to all, and so everybody gets what they want. Everything's burning down and going crazy. It's like, if I gave my kids everything they asked me for, it'd be bad. Like
I was imagining, usually like my 5-year-old asked me for a Glock, and I was imagining Ember with a Glock, and I was like, not good. I'd probably be dead.
Yeah. And so it's like that's a burden. And we're not trustworthy enough to know what we need.
Yeah.
And so thankfully, we can just kind of ask for everything, and God can sort it out,
Yeah.
and He can give us what we need and what we want, and how and when and why. And
You say need. This has been a really encouraging quote for me recently. It's like my Elizabeth Elliot quote. She says, "God has promised to supply our needs. So what we don't have, we don't need right now." It's like if you don't have it, if you're asking for it, and God's not giving it to you, you don't need it. And God's actually probably protecting you from something or for something. And so I think that's like really encouraging and really comforting.
Like you're not ready for this yet. You're not mature enough to handle this yet, or like there's actually some circumstances coming that you don't even know are coming, and this thing would actually interfere. Like there's so many variables and factors.
Well, it's like the most simplistic way I think we sometimes talk about it is, we say it's like, oh, I'm running late. I'm, something happened and I got to change my tire or whatever, and I'm running late, and then I'm stuck in traffic. Because there's a wreck up there. Then you think, oh, maybe if I hadn't left 5 minutes later than I was planning to,
that could be me.
That's the quickest tire change of all time. Then that maybe that was me, and that's like maybe an oversimplistic way to think about it.
Yeah, but it makes a point.
But it is like, kind of the point. It's like God sees all time, all moments, all circumstances, and we see this.
We can see what's literally right in front of us at the moment.
And so, who do you want? Who do you want to be in charge of giving you what you need, or who do you even want to be setting the expectation of what you need in that moment or not? And it's like, I think it's hard for us, but it's good for us to recognize, hey, if I don't have it, I don't need it. God's protecting me or preparing me for something.
Or preparing you. Like sometimes, like He is sending you through a season of drought to learn to go without for some reason in the future, to prepare you for some greater thing.
Yeah, and then this is the hardest part, is that you may never see the fruit of.
Or not realize, oh, this is the thing that prepared me for this thing.
Yeah,
you may not connect the dots, but you have to trust that God is actually good.
Yeah,
it's funny to me when we think about in that parable, your parents who give you good gifts, your father who gives you good gifts, and they're evil. We don't think about our parents being evil.
You said that, dude, and I was like, I hope his mom's not listening. I'm glad they didn't come this weekend. I'm glad they came last weekend. Because he was like, you were like, my parents are evil. And I was like, they were just here. They're great.
And it's like,
I was like, oh, you meant they meant like a theological sense.
But compared to God.
No.
And my parents are incredibly generous, and they provided so many things for me, and like, I can't count them all. And it's like, and they're evil. And they're limited in their perspective and wisdom and knowledge. And so taking a God who is infinite in wisdom, infinite in knowledge, infinite in understanding, infinite in knowing the future, and He's good. Just trust that He's got it and got my best interest at heart.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. This metaphor, I was hoping you'd bring this out, and you probably just didn't have time, but in the anxiety sermon, consider the lilies. Consider the birds. They don't reap nor sow, but the Lord gives them a home. How much more then does He care for you? And so it's the same language that that Jesus is using here. Like, who's gonna it's called a how much more parable is how they're generally talked about. And so you talk about, there's you mentioned being persistent in prayer. It's like the parable of the unjust judge, where you have the widow who's constantly going to this judge asking for justice, and that ends with a how much more. It's like, if this unjust judge is gonna give this persistent widow justice, it's like, and will not God give justice to those who ask? And so it's this how much more parable. Is that you can relate to this. So then, how much more is God going to deliver justice? How much more is He going to bless you? And so I think it's a really good reminder. I think it kind of brings us full circle, is that when you know that God is so good, why would you not go to Him in prayer? And it sort of flexes that muscle. Well, that's we're at the end of my notes. Any final thoughts on ask and you shall receive?
I don't think so.
All right.
My thoughts go to what a friend we have in Jesus.
Why is that?
It's just this is the one song I can think about that goes with prayer.
Oh, take it to the Lord in prayer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But there's a line in it that's like I'm gonna have to sing it.
Have you?
Yeah,
it's have you burdens and
it's all because we do not carry everything to the Lord.
everything to the Lord in prayer.
Like the reason we don't have stuff is because we don't carry it to
Yeah.
in prayer.
No, I think that's good. We sang that a few weeks ago. I think you were gone. I think I preached.
It's a good one.
And it was good.
It's an oldie but a goodie.
And it was good. Much like me. Well, thanks for joining us for the recap. We hope this conversation has encouraged you to keep striving to make Jesus essential in every aspect of your life. If you aren't part of our church family, we'd love to meet you on a Sunday morning. We gather for worship at 10:30 a.m. For more information, you can always go to myfellowship.church. That's an abrupt ending. Do you have anything left to say?
See ya.
Thanks for listening. Be blessed. Shout out Josh. New set. Looks great.